Ethan had spent the last year living alone in his small house on the edge of town. The peace and quiet were exactly what he needed after a long deployment overseas. His days were simple. He worked at the local mechanic shop, fixed up cars, and occasionally spent time with his friends at the diner. His life was routine, and he liked it that way. He was used to being on his own, with no one to worry about but himself. But all that changed one chilly evening in late October. The sun had barely set when Ethan was sitting on his couch, eating a microwave dinner, when he heard a soft knock at the door. He wasn't expecting anyone. He got up, wondering who could be at his door at this hour. When he opened the door, he wasn't sure what to expect. Standing there was a young woman. She looked tired, almost as if she had been traveling for days. Her clothes were worn, but not ragged, and she held a small bag tightly in her hands. Her face was pale, and her eyes, though tired, had a strange glow to them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan stood there, unsure of what to say. The woman took a deep breath before speaking in a soft, almost whispered voice. "I can cook. I can clean. I can be quiet," she said, her words trailing off. Ethan blinked, trying to process what she had just said. He couldn't understand what she meant, but there was something in her voice that made him feel sorry for her. She seemed so vulnerable, like she needed something but wasn't asking for help. Can I help you?" Ethan asked, his voice a little rough. The woman nodded slowly. "I need a place to stay, just for a while. I don't want to cause any trouble. I just need somewhere safe." Ethan hesitated for a moment. He had never been the type to turn someone away, especially not someone who seemed so lost. It wasn't like him to get involved with strangers, but there was something about her that tugged at him. "All right," Ethan said finally, stepping aside. "You can come in." The woman gave a small nod of thanks and stepped inside. She didn't say much more as Ethan closed the door behind her. He showed her to the guest room, which was simple but clean. She didn't seem to care much about the room itself. She set her bag down by the bed and immediately started making herself at home in a way that felt both natural and strange. Ethan offered her a drink, but she declined. Instead, she began to silently unpack a few items from her bag. Nothing unusual, just some clothes and a few books. She didn't look at Ethan as she moved around, as if she didn't want to disturb him or make him feel uncomfortable. After a while, Ethan noticed that she wasn't asking for anything more than the space to be left alone. She sat quietly by the window, staring out at the darkening sky. Ethan didn't know what to make of her. She didn't seem dangerous, but there was something about her that felt out of place. As the evening went on, Ethan offered her food, but again, she declined. "I'm fine," she whispered. He spent the rest of the night in his living room, the silence between them growing thicker. He couldn't help but feel like there was something more to this woman's story, something she wasn't telling him. The next morning, Ethan woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. He rubbed his eyes and walked into the kitchen, where he found the woman whose name he still didn't know cooking breakfast. She looked up when he entered, her expression calm. "I thought I could make breakfast," she said quietly, her hands moving expertly as she flipped pancakes. "I can cook." Ethan smiled awkwardly. "Well, that's very kind of you. I usually just grab something quick. But this is nice." She didn't respond with much more than a small nod, focusing on the pancakes as if they were the only thing in the world that mattered. As they ate breakfast together in silence, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why had she shown up on his doorstep, and why had she said those strange words about cooking, cleaning, and being quiet? It didn't make sense. But for now, he decided to let it go. He had been through enough in his life to know that sometimes people just needed a place to stay for a while. And maybe, just maybe, this woman would find whatever she was looking for. As they finished breakfast, she stood up and quietly began to clean the dishes. Just as she had said she would, Ethan watched her, still unsure of what to think. It seemed like she had a strange sort of quiet strength about her, like she had been through a lot and was used to taking care of herself. Ethan leaned back in his chair, still deep in thought. Who was she, and why had she come to him? He didn't know the answers yet, but something told him that the simple life he had known was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The days that followed were strange, yet oddly peaceful. Ethan woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee every morning, and the woman whose name was still unknown to him seemed to blend into his life without making any demands. She was quiet, almost to the point of being invisible, and yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching him closely, as if waiting for something. Her name, when she finally said it, was Lena. She spoke it quietly, like it was a secret. "I'm Lena," she had said one morning after breakfast. She had avoided his gaze, and Ethan could tell she was uncomfortable. "Lena," he repeated, trying the name out. It didn't sound like a name from around here. But then again, Lena didn't seem like someone from around here. Lena didn't stay long in the mornings. After breakfast, she would disappear into the guest room, and Ethan wouldn't see her again until lunch or dinner. She didn't leave the house, never spoke to anyone else, and never made a sound unless she needed something. At first, Ethan didn't mind the quiet. It was familiar to him. His life had always been calm, mostly spent with the hum of the engine or the rattle of tools. But there was something different now, something unsettling. He felt like he was walking on eggshells around her, unsure of what to say or how to act. One evening, as they sat in the living room together, Lena quietly folding laundry and Ethan reading a book, he tried to strike up a conversation. "You don't have to be so quiet," he said, not looking up from his book. "I'm used to silence, but you're making me feel like I'm supposed to be quiet too." Lena paused for a moment, her hand stilling on the shirt she was folding. Then she spoke softly. "I'm just trying not to be noticed." Ethan looked up from his book, his curiosity piqued. "Why would you need to do that?" Lena didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, her eyes distant. "Some things are better left unnoticed," she whispered, as though she were speaking to herself. Ethan didn't push it. He knew better than to pry into people's pasts, especially not someone like Lena, who clearly had her reasons for keeping her life to herself. The days turned into weeks, and despite the oddness of it all, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange connection to her. He had never really thought about it before, but now he realized he didn't want her to leave. There was something about her presence, something calming. He couldn't explain it, but she made the house feel fuller, even though she was so quiet. One afternoon, Ethan came home from work to find the door wide open. The wind had blown it ajar, and he immediately felt a sense of unease. It wasn't like Lena to leave the door open, especially when she was the only one home. He stepped inside, calling out her name. "Lena, you home?" There was no answer. He frowned, walking through the house to the guest room. The door was shut, but when he knocked lightly, there was no sound from inside. His heart began to race. "Lena?" He called again, louder this time. When the door opened, it was Lena, but she looked different. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and alert. She seemed frightened. "I thought I heard something," she said, her voice shaky. "I just needed some air." Ethan took a step back, his concern growing. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," she said, quickly, but her voice lacked conviction. "Just give me a minute. I'll be all right." Ethan didn't know what to do. He could see the fear in her eyes, but he didn't want to push her. Instead, he nodded. "All right, just let me know if you need anything." Lena gave a small smile and closed the door, leaving Ethan standing in the hallway, his thoughts racing. He felt a growing unease, like something was wrong, something big, but he couldn't figure out what it was. That night, after dinner, Ethan decided to take a walk around the property to clear his head. As he walked down the path leading to the woods behind the house, he noticed something odd. Footprints, fresh ones. They were small, delicate, and leading into the woods. His heart skipped a beat. He had never seen footprints like these before. They looked almost human, but not quite. Ethan stood there for a moment, debating whether to follow them. His curiosity got the better of him, and he slowly started walking in the direction of the prints. The further he went, the stranger it felt. The woods were quiet to quiet. The wind had stopped, and even the usual sounds of wildlife were absent. The only noise was the crunch of leaves beneath his boots. Then, just as he was about to turn back, he heard something, a whisper. It was faint, barely audible, but it was there. Ethan froze, listening closely. The whisper came again, this time clear, and his blood ran cold. "Stay away," the voice hissed. Ethan spun round, his heart racing. He looked in all directions, but the woods were empty. There was no one there. He took a step back, his instincts screaming at him to leave, but then he remembered Lena. He had to make sure she was okay. He hurried back to the house, finding the door still open. When he stepped inside, Lena was gone. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. His mind kept racing with questions, each one louder than the last. What was Lena hiding? Why had she acted so strange earlier? And what had he heard in the woods? He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, and the fear that he had been blind to it all was starting to gnaw at him. He hadn't seen her leave the house, but he had noticed her absence in the morning. She was gone, just like that. Ethan didn't know what to do, but his gut told him he had to find her. He couldn't let her just disappear. It was clear now that Lena wasn't just a normal woman. There was something about her that didn't add up, and he needed answers. The whole day passed slowly, with Ethan's thoughts constantly turning back to Lena. She hadn't left a note. She hadn't said goodbye, and there was no explanation. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Finally, after what felt like hours of waiting, Ethan couldn't sit still any longer. He grabbed his jacket and went outside, determined to find her, even if it meant searching the woods again. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, but the cool air was a reminder that the nights were getting colder. He walked through the yard, past the trees, and into the woods once again. This time, he didn't hesitate to follow the strange footprints he had seen the night before. He was certain now something was happening, and he couldn't ignore it. The deeper Ethan went, the more it felt like he was walking into another world. The trees grew thicker, their branches twisting like fingers reaching out to stop him. The silence around him was heavy, almost suffocating. It was like the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. After a few minutes of walking, Ethan stopped. He could see something up ahead, partially hidden behind a thick wall of bushes. A small, abandoned cabin sat there, almost as if it had been waiting for him to find it. The cabin looked old, with broken windows and a wooden door that seemed to be barely hanging on its hinges. His heart pounded as he approached. He had no idea what he was going to find inside, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. His feet carried him closer, and he slowly pushed the door open. Inside, the cabin was dark, with only a small amount of light filtering through the cracks in the walls. Ethan could see that it was empty, except for a few pieces of broken furniture and dust-covered floors. But what caught his attention was something that glowed faintly in the corner of the room. It was a small stone, glowing a soft blue. It was placed carefully on a table, surrounded by strange symbols carved into the surface. Ethan stepped forward, his hand reaching out toward it as his fingers brushed the stone. He felt a jolt of energy shoot through him, and for a moment, the world around him seemed to shift. He quickly pulled his hand back, startled. He had no idea what this stone was, but it felt alive, almost as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Suddenly, Ethan heard a voice. It wasn't a whisper this time, but a clear, firm sound that echoed through the cabin. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan spun around, his heart racing. There, standing in the doorway, was Lena. Her eyes were wide and full of a mix of fear and sadness, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "I told you, you shouldn't have come," she said softly. This is not your fight." Ethan took a step toward her, his voice steady despite the panic bubbling inside him. "Lena, what is this place? What is going on?" Lena shook her head. "I didn't want you to know, but now it's too late." She paused for a moment, looking down at the stone. "This is what I've been hiding. It's what my people have been searching for." Ethan looked from her to the stone, confusion still clouding his thoughts. "Your people? What do you mean? Who are you? Lena took a deep breath, as if preparing herself to reveal the truth. I'm not from here. I'm not human. Ethan stared at her, not sure if he was hearing her. Right. What do you mean, you're not human? Lena's gaze softened, and she stepped further into the cabin. I'm from a place far away. A place where my people have been hunted for centuries. We've been hiding on Earth for a long time. But now we're being found. This stone, it's the key to saving my kind, and it's also the key to the destruction of this world. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. You're saying this stone is dangerous? That it could destroy Earth? Yes, Lena replied quietly. It holds the power to either protect or destroy. And right now, I can't control it. Ethan didn't know what to think. He had always believed in the quiet life he had built, away from all the chaos of the world. But now, in front of him, was a reality he couldn't deny. There was more to Lena than he had ever imagined, and somehow, he had become a part of her fight. You have to help me, Lena said, her voice filled with urgency. They're coming. For me. They know I've found the stone, and they won't stop until they get it. And if they do, Earth will be caught in the crossfire. Ethan looked at her, his mind racing. This was bigger than he ever thought it could be. But somehow, he knew there was no turning back. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Ethan couldn't believe what Lena had just told him. She wasn't human. She was from another world. And this stone, the one glowing softly on the table, held the power to either save or destroy everything he knew. It felt like something out of a science fiction story, but the fear in Lena's eyes told him it was real. They stood in the old cabin, the air thick with tension. The faint glow of the stone seemed to pulse, almost as if it were alive. Ethan looked from the stone to Lena, his mind racing. Why me? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why did you come to me? I'm just a mechanic. I'm no one important. Lena's gaze softened, and she took a step closer. You're more important than you realize, Ethan. You've always been a part of this. My people, we've been watching for years. I didn't expect to find someone like you. Someone who could help. Ethan frowned. Help? How can I help? I don't even know what's going on. I just found you standing outside my door one night. I didn't want to drag you into this, Lena said, her voice trembling. But I don't have a choice anymore. They're coming for me, for the stone. And if they get it, everything will be lost. Ethan took a deep breath. His life had been simple, quiet, but now everything had changed. He wasn't sure if he believed her, but the look in her eyes, the fear, told him she wasn't lying. Who's coming for you? He asked. And why is this stone so important? Lena hesitated. The people after me are from a group called the Consortium. They're a military faction that's been hunting my kind for years. They know about the stone, and they won't stop until they have it. They believe the stone holds the power to control not just my people, but entire planets. If they get their hands on it, they'll use it to conquer worlds. Ethan's heart raced. The idea of something so powerful, something capable of destroying entire worlds, was terrifying. He felt completely out of his depth. But there was something about Lena, about the way she spoke with such sincerity, that made him believe she wasn't just a fugitive running from some government agency. She was a person, someone who needed his help. What do we do now? He asked. His voice steadied despite the growing panic inside. We have to hide, Lena replied quickly. I need to keep the stone safe. The Consortium will be able to track it, but they won't know where I've hidden it. We can't stay here. We have to move. Ethan nodded. He had no idea how to fight a military faction or keep an ancient stone hidden. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. Where do we go? He asked. Lena's eyes flickered with hesitation before she spoke again. I have a safe place. A location where we can keep the stone hidden. It's in the mountains, far from here. But we need to move quickly. They could be here soon. Ethan didn't hesitate. He knew this wasn't a situation where he could sit back and wait. All right, he said. Let's go. I'll help you get there. Lena looked at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. You don't have to do this, Ethan. You don't have to risk your life for me. But Ethan was already grabbing his jacket. I'm not just going to stand by and let them take you or the stone. I don't know what's going on, but I know you need help, and I'm not backing down now." Lina's smile grew a little wider. For the first time, Ethan saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly. They left the cabin. In silence, heading back toward the house, Ethan grabbed a few supplies. Not sure how long they'd be gone or what dangers awaited them, his mind kept racing with questions. But he knew one thing for sure. He was no longer the quiet mechanic. He had been. His life had been flipped upside down in a matter of days, and now he was a part of something much bigger than himself. As they made their way through the woods, Lina glanced over at him. "I never wanted you to get involved," she said, "but I'm glad you're here. I don't know what I would have done without you." Ethan just nodded. He didn't know why he felt so compelled to help her, but something deep inside him told him this was the right thing to do. She was more than just an alien on the run. She was someone who had been caught in a battle much bigger than either of them, and somehow he was a part of it now. They walked in silence for a while longer, the air growing colder as they made their way toward the mountain pass. Ethan kept glancing around, half expecting someone to jump out of the trees and be them, but there was no one. The woods were eerily quiet. As they reached the edge of the woods, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ground. The road ahead was empty, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every step they took felt like it was being monitored, and the sense of urgency grew with each passing minute. Lina led him toward an old truck that had been hidden behind some trees. It was dusty and looked like it hadn't been used in a long time, but it would do. She unlocked the door, and Ethan climbed into the passenger seat, watching as she started the engine. As the truck rumbled to life, Lina looked at him one last time. "We're not safe yet," she said quietly, "but we're a step closer." Ethan didn't say anything. He just nodded. They had a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was doing something that mattered. The truck bounced along the rough road, the engine growling with each turn and bump. The sun had disappeared behind the mountains, and the only light left came from the faint glow of the stars overhead. The air was cold, and Ethan pulled his jacket tight around him. He sat in silence, his mind racing with everything Lina had told him. He still didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew that his life had been changed forever. Lina drove with focused determination, her eyes fixed on the dark road ahead. She hadn't spoken much since they left the cabin. Ethan noticed how her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, as if she was trying to keep her thoughts under control. "Lina," Ethan said quietly, breaking the silence, "you said the consortium is after you. What exactly are they, and why are they after the stone?" Lina glanced at him briefly before returning her gaze to the road. "The consortium is an organization from my world. They're powerful, ruthless. They've been hunting my people for generations. They believe that if they control the stone, they'll have the power to destroy worlds, to bend entire civilizations to their will." Ethan shifted in his seat, feeling a cold shiver run down his spine. "So, this stone really can destroy everything?" Lina nodded slowly. "Yes, the stone was created by my people a long time ago. It holds unimaginable power. Power that could change the fate of entire galaxies. If the consortium gets their hands on it, they won't just destroy my people, they'll destroy everything." Ethan processed her words, feeling a weight settle on his chest. He had never imagined he would be caught up in something so dangerous. All he wanted was a quiet life, fixing cars, living without complications. But now, he was running for his life with a woman from another world, trying to protect a stone that could destroy everything he knew. The truck rumbled over a rough patch in the road, and Lina shifted gears without missing a beat. "I never wanted to bring you into this, Ethan. You deserve peace, not a war." Ethan looked at her, his expression serious. "You didn't bring me into this, Lina. I chose to be here. I'm not going to turn my back on you now." Lina's lips parted as if she was about to say something, but she stopped herself. Instead, she gave a small, grateful smile. "Thank you. You don't know how much that means." They continued driving in silence for a while, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the crunch of tires on gravel. The night seemed to stretch on forever, and with every mile, the weight of their journey seemed to grow heavier. Finally, Lena spoke again, her voice low. "We're almost there." Ethan glanced out the window, trying to see where they were going. The road had narrowed as they entered the mountains, the trees growing thicker on either side. The further they drove, the more isolated the area seemed. He could see only the shadows of the trees and the faint outline of the distant mountains. In the moonlight, Lena turned the truck onto a smaller, hidden trail that veered off the main road. The path was even bumpier, and Ethan held onto the door as the truck jolted up the mountain. "We'll have to park here," Lena said, pulling over beside a group of tall pine trees. The headlights of the truck cut through the darkness, casting long shadows on the ground. Ethan stepped out of the truck, his boots crunching on the dry leaves beneath his feet. The air was colder up here, and he pulled his jacket tighter, glancing round. The mountains seemed to close in around them, the trees standing like silent watchers in the night. It was a strange, eerie silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves. Lena stood beside him, looking up at the sky. "This is as far as we can go by truck," she said. "The rest of the way is on foot." Ethan nodded, his stomach twisting with nerves. "How far are we going?" "It's not far," Lena replied, "but the trail is steep, and we need to be careful." The consortium has eyes everywhere. They started walking up the narrow path, the ground rough and uneven beneath their feet. Ethan glanced back at the truck, still parked by the trees, wondering if they had been followed. His mind kept spinning with all the questions he still didn't have answers to. How had Lena ended up on Earth? Why had she chosen him? And most importantly, how could they stop the consortium from getting the stone? As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thinner, and the temperature dropped. The quiet around them felt suffocating, like they were the last two people left on Earth. After a few minutes of walking, Lena stopped and turned to him. "I have to tell you something," she said, her voice low and serious. "There's more to the stone than I've told you." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Lena took a deep breath. "The stone doesn't just hold power. It chooses who can wield it. And when it chooses, it binds itself to that person. Once the bond is made, the stone's power cannot be taken away. It's a part of you." Ethan blinked, trying to process what she had said. "So, the stone has a mind of its own?" Lena nodded. "It doesn't exactly think, but it has a will. And once it's bonded to someone, it protects them. The consortium knows this, which is why they're hunting me. They want control of the stone. But it's not so easy. I can't just give it to them." Ethan was silent for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He didn't understand all the details, but he knew one thing. Whatever the stone was, it was more powerful and more dangerous than anything he had ever imagined. They continued up the mountain, their footsteps steady but cautious in the distance. Ethan could see a faint light flickering through the trees. "This way," Lena said, pointing to the light. "It's just ahead." The air was thin and cold as Ethan and Lena made their way deeper into the mountains. The path was steep, and each step felt heavier than the last. The distant flicker of the light they had seen earlier grew brighter as they drew closer, and soon it became clear that it wasn't just a flicker, it was a campfire. Lena's pace quickened, and Ethan, despite the burning in his legs, followed her. They reached a small clearing, and in the center stood a wooden cabin, hidden behind the trees. The campfire crackled in front of the cabin, and a figure sat beside it, its face hidden by the flickering shadows. Lena stopped just before the firelight reached them. Holding her hand up for Ethan to wait, she stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's time." Ethan didn't understand. Time for what? Lena didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward the figure by the fire, and for a moment, Ethan thought she was about to leave him behind. His stomach churned with unease, but he followed her anyway, unable to ignore the feeling that this moment was important. As he approached the fire, the figure turned, revealing the face of an older man, his features sharp and weathered by years of living in the Wild. His eyes, though tired, had a sharpness to them that reminded Ethan of a hunter watching his prey. "Lena," the man said in a low voice, his gaze flicking between her and Ethan. "You brought him here?" Lena nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, he's the one I told you about." The man studied Ethan for a moment before turning back to Lena. "You trust him?" "I do," she said firmly. Ethan felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The way the man was looking at him made him feel like an outsider, like he didn't belong in this world Lena had brought him into. But he stood his ground. He had made his choice, and now he couldn't turn back. "All right, then," the man said after a long pause. "We'll have to move fast. The consortium isn't far behind." Lena turned to Ethan, her voice soft but urgent. "This is Mikhail. He's one of the few people I trust. He'll help us keep the stones safe." Ethan nodded, though the name meant nothing to him. He was still trying to piece together everything he had learned. He had barely wrapped his mind around the fact that Lena wasn't from Earth, and now he was supposed to trust a stranger who spoke in half sentences and didn't explain anything. Mikhail stood up slowly, brushing dirt from his worn jacket. "The stone is in danger," he said, looking at both of them. "And you're not safe here. The consortium's forces are closer than you think." Lena's eyes darkened. "We need to find a place where they can't track us, somewhere they don't have eyes." Mikhail nodded. "I have a location, but it won't be easy to get there. The road is dangerous, and we'll need to move fast. We'll take what we can carry and leave no trace." Ethan's mind was spinning. They were running again. Everything had happened so fast. First, the strange woman on his doorstep, then the stone, and now a mysterious group after them. And in the middle of it all, he was somehow caught up in the fight for a stone that could destroy planets. He didn't know what was real anymore, but he couldn't back out. Lena turned to him, her expression softening for a moment. "Ethan, I know this is a lot, but I need you to trust me. The stone will protect us, but only if we can keep it safe from the consortium." Ethan swallowed hard. "I don't know how to stop them, but I'll help you however I can. I'm not leaving you behind." She smiled at him, a look of gratitude in her eyes. It was the first time he'd seen her truly smile, and it made his heart feel lighter. Mikhail cleared his throat. "Enough talk. We need to go." "Now," Ethan nodded, following Mikhail as he led them toward the edge of the clearing. They took a path that wound round the cabin, moving silently through the trees. The cold air seemed to press in around them as they traveled, and Ethan kept his eyes on the ground, watching for any signs of movement. He didn't know who was after them or how close they were, but he knew they couldn't afford to make a mistake after what felt like hours of walking. In silence, the trees started to thin, and the terrain became more rugged. They reached a cliffside overlooking a dark valley, the lights of distant towns flickering far below. Mikhail turned to them, his face grim. "We're almost there, but the consortium won't give up easily. We'll need to climb down this cliff and make our way through the valley. It's the only way to stay off their radar." Lena's eyes were fixed on the valley below. "I know the way. We can make it." Ethan looked down at the steep drop, his stomach turning. "How are we supposed to climb that?" Mikhail raised an eyebrow, a small, almost amused smile tugging at his lips. "You'll see. Just trust me. I wouldn't bring you here if it wasn't the safest option." Ethan nodded, though his heart was still racing. He wasn't a climber, and the thought of scaling a cliff made his stomach churn. But he couldn't back out now. They had come this far, and whatever happened next, he would face it head-on. Mikhail led the way, climbing down the cliff with ease. Ethan and Lena followed, each step careful and deliberate. The wind howled around them as they made their descent, and the valley below seemed to grow darker with each passing second. When they finally reached the bottom, Mikhail turned to Ethan. "We'll move quickly now. The consortium is close, and we need to be ready for anything." Ethan didn't speak. He just nodded, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. They were in this together, and there was no turning back now. The descent had been steep and exhausting, but they had made it to the bottom of the cliff. The valley below them stretched out in darkness, lit only by distant, scattered lights of small villages. The air felt different here, fresher. more alive with the scent of pine and earth. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Mikhail led the way, moving swiftly through the trees, his footsteps light and practiced. Lena stayed close behind him, her pace steady, while Ethan followed closely, trying to match their speed. He wasn't used to this kind of movement. Everything felt unfamiliar. He was used to fixing cars and handling tools, not running from enemies who could change the course of history with a single stone. But there was no turning back now. They kept moving through the dense forest, the trees closing in around them. As the path grew narrower, the silence was thick, broken only by the soft crunch of their footsteps on the forest floor. Ethan kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting the sound of distant engines or footsteps to follow them. But the valley remained quiet, and there was no sign of anyone following. Lena walked beside him, her expression still guarded, but with a slight sense of urgency. She hadn't spoken much since they started the climb down the cliff. Ethan could sense that she was on edge, but she was trying to hide it. He could understand why. They were all running from something far bigger than themselves, and the uncertainty of what might happen next hung in the air like a thick fog. After what felt like hours, they reached a small clearing. The moonlight cast long shadows across the ground, and in the center of the clearing, a small cabin stood. It was rustic, made of wood and stone, with a small stone chimney puffing out faint smoke into the night. The cabin looked old, but it seemed sturdy enough. "This is it," Mikhail said, his voice low and steady. "We'll stay here for the night." Lena nodded, her eyes scanning the area. "We can rest here. But tomorrow, we move again. We can't afford to stay in one place for too long." Ethan felt a sense of relief. At least they had a place to rest for a while. He followed them into the cabin, taking in the simple interior. The furniture was basic but functional, with a few wooden chairs and a small table in the center. There was a small fireplace that had been recently used, and the walls were lined with shelves full of books and supplies. It looked like a safe haven, far from the prying eyes of the consortium. Mikhail went to the fireplace and started to stoke the fire, while Lena went to the small kitchen area to prepare something to eat. Ethan sat down at the table, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over him. He had been on edge for so long, his body reacting to the tension in ways he didn't even understand. But now, in the quiet of the cabin, he finally allowed himself to breathe, even if just for a moment. He watched as Lena moved around the cabin, her movements graceful and practiced. It was strange to think that this woman, who had come into his life so suddenly, was hiding so much. She was from another world. She had a stone that could change the future, and she had enemies who would stop at nothing to take it from her. Bethan's thoughts were interrupted as Lena set a bowl of food in front of him. It was simple, just some rice and vegetables, but it smelled warm and comforting. "Thank you," he said, offering a small smile. Lena nodded and sat down across from him, her eyes focused on the fire. "We'll need to keep moving," she said quietly, her voice distant. "The stone, it has a connection to me. It's like a bond. If I stay too close to it for too long, the consortium will be able to trace it." Ethan looked up from his bowl, confused. "So, you can't keep it with you?" "No," Lena said, shaking her head. "I can, but it's dangerous. The more I'm near it, the stronger the signal becomes. I need to find a way to break the connection or hide it completely." "And how do we do that?" Ethan asked. "What can we do to stop them from getting it?" Lena's gaze darkened. "I don't know, but we'll find a way. We have to." The weight of her words hung in the air. Ethan had never been a hero, never been part of something so much bigger than himself. But as he looked at Lena, he knew he couldn't just turn away. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. "We'll figure it out," he said quietly. Together, Lena's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, the exhaustion in her eyes seemed to lift. There was a flicker of hope there, something that made Ethan believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make it through this. Mikhail, who had been quietly watching them, cleared his throat. "We'll need to move again at dawn. The consortium is relentless, and they have resources that we can't even imagine." Ethan nodded, his thoughts swirling. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but he knew that he couldn't let Lena face this alone. They were in this together, and no matter how dangerous things got, he wouldn't leave her behind. As they sat around the fire, the warmth of the flames seemed to wrap around them, offering a brief moment of peace. But Ethan knew it wouldn't last. They had only just begun this journey, and the road ahead would be filled with uncertainty and danger still. He couldn't help but feel a strange sense of purpose, of feeling that maybe, in some small way, he was making a difference. Tomorrow, they would move again, but for tonight, they could rest. And for the first time in days, Ethan allowed himself to close his eyes and sleep, knowing that whatever came next, he would face it head on.